We are now in the middle of the 3 weeks. It's the saddest period in the Jewish calendar. It's the time that goes from one fast day called Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz, to the saddest day on the Jewish calendar, known as Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av. And this series is essentially going to tell the story of this time of year. And it's not a fun story. There's not really a happy ending. It's upon us to create the happy ending. It's upon us to use this time, these 3 weeks, to create a greater reality so that we can reverse this long and bitter exile that we've been in since the last Tisha B'Av, when the temple was destroyed, close to 2,000 years now. And it's our job during this period to really focus on what we can do to reverse this horrible exile. During this period of time, it's a time of mourning. There are no weddings. Weddings are not allowed to be made during the 3 weeks. One is not allowed to hear music, especially according to some live, according to some even recorded. You'll notice that my beard will get longer and longer. I will not shave during this 3-week period. It's a time of mourning and a time of self-reflection, of thinking about what we can do to get our people back to the glory times. The times like when we had the temple and the direct relationship with God, the times that the world respected the people of Israel. The time where now we read in the newspapers every day anti-Semitism is on the rise. The violent anti-Semitism is on an extreme rise. All around the world, people are pointing fingers at Jews, and we need to reverse that. So what this series is going to do is this series is going to tell the story of Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz. That we'll talk about briefly. And then in a more lengthy fashion, we're going to tell the story of the destruction of the temple. And it's not fun, but we need to know the story as Jews. I just came back from a trip to Poland. We had a large group of people from Detroit. We met up with other groups from Dallas and from Toronto and from Phoenix and New York. And we saw the horrors of what went on there. And hopefully, I think Partners is actually going to be making a trip there in March or April. And you're all welcome to come. And I believe that every Jew must go at least once in their life to see what happened in Poland. It's not a fun trip. People get back to, how was Poland? Poland was terrible. Poland is soaked with Jewish blood. Close to 4 million Jews died there in 5 years. What do you want me to say? It's not Club Med. So this series is not Club Med, but it's important for us all to know the story of our people and know the story of the destruction, which can then give us that pause, that reflection, for us to say, what am I doing to make it have a happy ending? The happy ending is on us. This series is called from the works of the Me'am Loes. This year we did the Me'am Loes on Esther, if you remember, before Purim, and it was absolutely fascinating. We had 7 weeks of classes and we covered 3 chapters of Esther. God willing, next year we'll go back for some more of that. The Me'am Loes was a fascinating character. Well, actually, the Me'am Loes was a collection of characters, different parts. The Me'am Loes was a book written in Ladino. It's the most prominent work ever written in Ladino. Ladino is to the Sephardic Jewry what Yiddish was to Ashkenazic Jewry. It was a Jewish tongue, a Jewish language made up of a combination of Hebrew and Yiddish, and Spanish and Arabic. It was a combination language. Just like Yiddish is a little bit of Hebrew, a little bit of German. And it was the primary language for half of Jewry for hundreds and hundreds of years. The Me'am Loes was written, it was probably the most famous work ever written in Ladino, and it was there because the Jews in the Sephardic part of the world were at a very low point in their history. And while the Jews in the Ashkenazic world were experiencing a resurgence of enthusiasm and energy through the rise of Chassidut, of the Hasidic movement and the mystical world being opened up to them, the world of the Sephardic Jewry was still very dark, and Rav Yitzchak Kuli was the beginning of the Mamlois. He started the Mamlois as something there to lift up the Jewry in the Sephardic world, and he did a tremendous job of it. However, he passed after only doing the book of Genesis and part of Exodus, and then his work was picked up by various other people who continued this work. So whatever we're going to do today is from the Mamlois, and the Mamlois was translated to English by Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan, who lived in New York, was a phenomenal, fascinating individual, a brilliant scientist, an amazing rabbi with an incredible grasp of Kabbalah. He also had Sephardic roots, and he poured over the original Ladino manuscripts of the Mamlois to write this translation. So whatever we discuss over the course of the next 3 weeks is from Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan's translation of the Mamlois. You can actually buy it in your bookstores. It's called The Story of Tisha B'Av. So that's the preface. The Mishnah in Tractate Ta'anis, which deals with fast days, tells us that 5 calamities befell the Jewish people on the 17th of Tammuz, which is the beginning of the 3 weeks, and 5 calamities befell the Jewish people on Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, the saddest day in the Jewish calendar, which is the end, the other end of this mourning period. So we'll start with what happened on the 17th of Tammuz, which this year came out this past Shabbos. And of course, the fast day, you don't have a fast day on Shabbos, so we fasted on Sunday. My brother's birthday is on the 18th of Tammuz. So this year he had the great fortune of having his birthday come out on a fast day. Okay. What was the first calamity that befell the Jewish people on the 17th of Tammuz? No. The golden calf and the breaking of the tablets. The Torah was given to the Jewish people on either the 6th of Sivan or the 7th of Sivan, depending on how you understand it. There's a dispute amongst the sages. The very next morning, Moses goes up to heaven for 40 days to receive the actual physical tablets and the commandments of the Torah. The Jews got confused upon what time he was supposed to come down. They thought he was supposed to come down on the 16th of Tammuz. Really, he was supposed to come down on the 17th of Tammuz. It was supposed to be 40 complete days, which would mean he would come down the next morning. They got shaken and scared, and they built a golden calf. Now, we've talked about that in some other classes, trying to understand how a nation who just saw God at Sinai, saying to them, I am the Lord your God, do not have any other gods, could build a golden calf. Suffice it to say that it was not a simple, well, Moses is gone, probably God is dead, let's build a calf and that will be our new God. It was not that. We've discussed it before in other classes. It was an incredibly deep idea what they were trying to do. It was also incredibly wrong. Moses comes down in the morning with the tablets, and what does he see? The Jewish people dancing around a golden calf, an idol. And he decides that this people cannot be given the tablets upon which God wrote with his own finger. God himself wrote the first tablets. And on it says, do not have any other gods. They cannot have these tablets. And Moses dashes them to the ground and they are shattered. Thank you. At the time that the Jewish people were sitting with the golden calf, the oceans rose, threatening to flood the world. Moses saw this and he ground the golden calf into powder. He took the gold and literally ground it up until it was a fine powder. And Moses said, why are you to the ocean? Why are you trying to destroy the world? And it said the ocean, again, these are midrashim. We have to understand how to understand them. The ocean's response was the whole world was created for the Torah. so that people should live along the instructions of God, the divine wisdom of God. This is what God wants for the world, and this is why the world was created. And the Israelites have rebelled against the Torah. So Moses took the powder and he started to throw it across the surface of the water. He said, here, take everything they did. You take everything they made. But the oceans were still not stopping. The rage of the oceans was still getting stronger and stronger. And finally, Moses took from the golden calf those ashes, the powder that he had made from grinding up the golden calf, and he mixed it with water. And he gave it to the Jewish people to drink, and those who were most guilty of the sin of the golden calf died upon drinking that concoction, and finally the waters quieted down. At that time, it was decreed upon the Jewish people that we would be subjugated to two things that are still with us today: death and subjugation of other nations. When God originally created mankind, the intent was that mankind would have eternal life. If you remember, before Adam sinned, Adam and Eve, let's not forget her, right? Let's not put all the guilt on the guy like usual. No, okay? Before Adam and Eve sinned, God said to them, if you don't eat from this fruit of knowledge of good and evil, you can eat from the tree of life and live forever. Instead, they ate from the other tree, from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which we've had an entire class about that. What were they doing? Why were they doing it? But ultimately, death was decreed upon mankind. When God gave the Torah to the Jewish people at Mount Sinai, the intent of God was to bring the world back to its pre-sin status, where mankind, by following in the ways of God, could have lived forever. When they sinned with the golden calf, they lost that incredible opportunity. Additionally, had the Jews not sinned with the golden calf, the nation would have been so powerful that no people in the world would ever have been able to subjugate us. We see this when the Torah was given. It says, and the luchos were the work of God, and the writing was the writing of God, charut al haluchot, which means engraved on the tablets. But the sages tell us, do not read engraved on the tablets. Rather read, not charut, which is engraved, rather read cherut, freedom. The words of God were freedom upon the tablets. What was it freedom from? It was freedom from the grip of death and freedom from the subjugation of the nations. Had the Jewish people been given those first tablets that Moses was bringing down with God's own writing, it would have been a get-out-of-jail-free card for eternity for the Jewish people, and we never would have suffered subjugation, we never would have suffered death even. We would have been free from all that. As the Torah is described, Eitz Chaim hi lamachazikim ba, the Torah is the tree of life for those who cling to it. But we didn't. The first tablets were destroyed. Moses shattered them, and he was right for doing so. God eventually says to him, you did the right thing. And that is the first terrible thing that happened on the 17th of Tammuz. Next, the Jewish people had an offering. And this is actually very instructive for our own lives. Well, actually, the previous one is very instructive for our own lives too. Meaning, the more we hold on to the Torah, the more we are connected to the tree of life. I want to tell you something amazing. A few years ago, there was a terrible bout of great rabbis passing away. Within 1 year, 3 of the greatest Jewish rabbis passed away. I think their average age was like 102. Their average age. One of them was 108. One of the greatest sages, one of those rabbis, was somebody known as Rabbi Eliezer Man Shach, who was the Rosh Yeshiva, the dean of a yeshiva in Israel called Panovich. And I think he was 102. Now let me tell you something about Rabbi Eliezer Man Shach. In his house, which was a tiny little apartment in Bnei Brak, despite the fact that he had so many followers, he could have built a mansion, he could have bought a Rolls Royce with the license plates Rabbi Shach on it. He could have had any luxury in his life, but he lived in a very simple apartment in Bnei Brak. As a matter of fact, one of the greatest rabbis today alive, Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky, lives not far from where he lives in a simple 2-bedroom apartment. This is the person that people come to from all over the world and give him charity like by the millions. When I say millions, I mean literally. And he doesn't keep any of it for himself. He just gives it out. He lives in a simple 2-bedroom apartment. Now, Rabbi Eliezer Man Shach, I didn't go through his apartment, so I can't tell you 100%, but I'm pretty confident that in his apartment, he did not have an elliptical. He did not have a Stairmaster. He did not do, any kind of exercise. He didn't exercise. He didn't do yoga stretches, that's for sure. But yet he lived to 102. Because he wasn't holding on to, what he was holding on to, he was holding on to Eitz Chaim Hi L'Machazikim Ba. He was holding on to the Torah itself. He was holding on to the staff of life. And so many of our great rabbis who we see living to incredibly long lives, and none of them are doing all the things that we're being told in terms of exercise and working out. And now, I'm not recommending, by the way, that you all stop working out. Please. Make sure you have in your house an elliptical and a Stairmaster and a treadmill. Don't let anybody say, the rabbi said we don't have to work out anymore. You don't have to work, I'll tell you what, you don't have to work out anymore if you're studying Torah for 19 hours a day or more. Fair enough? You can say that. That you can tell people. The rabbi said if I learn 19 hours a day of Torah, I don't have to do the elliptical for 20 minutes anymore. So that's a good trade-off. I'm happy to say, I'll get behind that. But it's an amazing thing. How do these people live such incredible long lives? They're holding on to the staff of life. More so. Not every rabbi who holds on to the Torah lives to 102, right? And if that was the case, if everybody who studied Torah lived to 102, Dr. Oz would probably be making it into capsules and selling it for a lot of money on TV somewhere. But there's another thing about life. Eitz Chaim Hi L'Machazikim Ba is a staff of life to those who grasp it. Life is not always measured in terms of length of life. It's measured by how much you're living life. It's not how many years that you lived, but how many years of those that you lived did you really live? People can go through life, they can go through 7 years, 10 years, with almost nothing changing in their life. I woke up, I went to bed. I woke up, I went to bed. I went to the doctor, I came home. I went to this, I went to that, and what? And what? How are you quantitatively, not quantitatively, because you're quantitatively 10 years older. That's in terms of quantity. But qualitatively, can you really say that you use those 10 years effectively? When we live with the Torah, we live on the edge. And just today, on the way over here, I had the radio on for a few minutes. I'm actually in the middle of listening to an amazing series by a good friend of mine. I called him in the middle of riding over here. I was listening to a Torah tape by a good friend of mine who, when we were in camp together as young teenagers, we used to wrestle all the time together. We're like wrestling buddies. So I call him up. I got his phone number. He says, hello. I say, hey, how you doing? He says, I'm doing well. I don't know who this is. I'm like, this is your wrestling buddy from Camp Romamu. He's an amazing rabbi, Rabbi Ari Ben Shushan. Incredible, incredible individual. He himself faced down death. he had cancer and he beat it. It's an amazing, and he lives his life every moment. He's attacking life every moment. But before my Torah tape came on, when I got in my car, it's automatic. I have to sync my phone to my car. It's a whole situation there. But when you turn on the car, automatically my audio goes on. And there was some kind of thing there about this guy. He's a stunt parachuter. He's about to try some kind of new stunt. And if you guys are into the world of skydiving, there's a guy named Felix Baumgartner who already jumped from out of space. He jumped from 129,000 feet higher, 125,000 feet. 125,000 feet above the earth. He was so high when he jumped, he could see the curvature of the world. Unreal. Yeah, he jumped. We're talking about it's ridiculous. Some kind of over 20 miles. Jumped from over 20 miles above the earth. And this morning I missed the beginning of it, but all I know is when I turned on my car, it said something about how this kind of jump has never been successfully done before, and they asked him, is he scared? And he said, of course I'm scared. If I wasn't scared, I'd be an idiot. To which the newscaster said, some would say he's an idiot even with being scared. Why are people doing this? Why are people feeling the need to jump out of planes that are 25,000 feet above the earth? Why do people need to jump off of peaks wearing squirrel suits? Right, and flying on their squirrel suits, like a squirrel. Of course, not the regular squirrels, because the regular squirrels, if they would fly, it'd be more like this. But there's a certain kind of squirrel that has sort of extended flaps. I forgot what the name of that particular. It's like a flying squirrel, I think it's called. A flying fox or squirrel. Anyway, the bottom line is they wear these suits. Why are people paddling out into waves that are 70 feet high?
They're Meshuggah too.
They're Meshuggah too. No, the answer is they want to feel. They want to feel. After a while, life just gets boring. Not for you guys, you're amazing. No, I'm talking for everybody else outside of this room. We're in a special zone over here. Okay, guys? But out there in the rest of the world, people get bored with life and then they start doing crazy things to feel again. And they could be extreme sports. It could be extremely weird things. And I'm not going to go any further, and don't even let your imagination roam, but people go to really crazy places just to feel a little bit of excitement. They want to feel. You want to feel? The Torah has a whole different prescription for feeling. Challenge yourself. Challenge yourself. Fight. Fight with yourself. Battle yourself. Engage yourself. Don't just be okay with you. Fight with you to be bigger, to be better, to be kinder, to make your days count more. You do that, you're living on the edge all the time. You're never just settled. You're never just there. No, you're in battle all the time. And that's an incredible way to really live your own life. Engaged with who you are and what you're all about. You want to live on the edge? You can try to live on the edge of some kind of cliff or some kind of wave, or you can try to live on the edge of your soul. You can try to force yourself to pack more meaning into every day. To grab onto the staff of life. I'm talking about life. I don't just mean physical breathing. I'm not talking about respiration over here. I'm talking about exhilaration. I'm talking about real living. And when you beat yourself, and I'm not referring to any of the kind of things that people do when they're looking for excitement. I'm talking about when you beat yourself and you overcome your tendencies. That for the last 20 years, you've been doing X one way, and you say, that's not the way for me to be doing things. For 20 years, I've been going to synagogue once a month. And I say, enough with that. I have the opportunity to go to the synagogue and talk to God. Me, myself, that's right. I could go in there and talk to him, tell him what's going on, thank him for the amazing life that he's given me, the breath that I have. Ask him for better help. Ask him for help with my children. Ask him for help with whatever I need. Talk to him. I'm not going once a month. No. I'm going once a week. And you get to a place where that becomes your reality, and you love it. You love it. You're living on the edge. You're challenging yourself. You're getting yourself off of your spiritual couch, so to speak. Eitz Chaim Hila Machazikim Ba. It is a staff of life to those who grasp onto it, to those who are challenging them. And I say it's a staff of life. It doesn't necessarily mean you'll live to 102, but it means that while you're alive, you'll be alive. You'll be real with yourself. Okay. Next. So that's what we're saying. When the Jewish people, had they held on to the Torah properly, they would have had life forever. They lost that. That was the first calamity that happened on the 17th of Tammuz. Calamity number 2. There's a mitzvah in the Torah to bring and sacrifice called the Korban Tamid, which means the continual offering. Why was it called the continual offering? Because it was brought continually, every single day. Now, there were a lot of very elaborate sacrifices brought in the temple. For example, on Sukkot, the Jewish people would bring 70 bulls. On the first day, they would bring 13, and then 12, and then 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, in honor of the 70 nations of the world, the ark nations of the world. Very elaborate offerings. But God says every day, here's what I want from you. Forget the elaborate offerings. Every day I want one little sheep in the morning and one little sheep in the evening. A little sheep in the morning to atone for whatever sins you may have done during the night. A little sheep in the evening to atone for whatever sins you did during the day. A little sheep. That offering gave the Jewish people tremendous protection. And it's also an amazing lesson for us. I just talked about living on the edge. I just talked about holding on to the staff of Torah and the energy and exhilaration it can give us. The best way to do that is to start with a little sheep in the morning and a little sheep in the evening. Think of one small thing that you can do that you're not doing right now every morning, and one small thing that you can do every night that you're not doing right now, and incorporate that into your life. And continual, though that's the key, continual. Every morning, if you're not saying Modeh Ani, there's a little prayer we say. It's 12 words, thanking God for a new day. That's a little sheep. Just say every morning when I wake up, before I even get out of bed, before I do anything, immediately when I wake up, I will say the Modeh Ani prayer, thanking God for another day of life. At night before I go to bed, I will say the Shema. Or at night before I go to bed, I will put a charity box next to my bed. And the very last thing that I do before I go to bed will be to take a quarter, a dollar, and drop it into the charity box. If you're not doing that yet, those are both very easy things. Wake up with thanking God. End your day with Shema, with a little bit of charity. It's a little offering in the morning and a little offering in the evening. A little more offering in the morning, a little offering in the evening. That's what God wants from us, but continual. Make it part of our lives. Not huge, not massive things, not massive acts of sacrifice, but rather little sheep in the morning, little sheep in the evening. Now, this offering was brought every single day in the temple. On the 17th of Tammuz, this offering stopped. For the first time in hundreds of years. The first temple was around for 410 years. The second temple was around for 420 years. And this offering was stopped on the 17th of Tammuz. During the first temple, the Jews were in siege. We'll learn about that later. And on the 17th of Tammuz, they simply ran out of livestock. They did not have any more animals in Jerusalem. And they could not bring the Korban Tamid. And that is how it happened the first time, in the first temple, that on the 17th of Tammuz, the offering of the Tamid was stopped. In the second temple, the story is not as simple. We all know about the holiday of Hanukkah. Hanukkah's a good thing. Here we go. Let's take a little break, smile. You know, like sometimes in the middle of a class I say, okay, everybody get up and do jumping jacks. I'm just going to say, okay, let's talk. Just say Hanukkah and everyone can just smile. It's like an intense class. We're talking about all these bad things. So here we go. Here's a Hanukkah moment. Think about latkes. Think about gifts. Think about ugly sweaters. Whatever, whatever does it for you. Now, the heroes of the battle of the Hashmonaim, the Maccabees, versus the Greeks, were the priests, the priestly class. Yochanan Kohen Gadol and his son, Matisyo Kohen Gadol, Matisyo the high priest, and his sons, Yochanan and Elazar and Shimon, and so on. They were the heroes of the battle. However, after they drove out the Greeks, what they were supposed to do was to give the reins back to the tribe of Judah. While the priests were from the tribe of Levi, they were supposed to give the reins back to the tribe of Judah because the children, the Davidic line is supposed to be the line from which all Jewish kings come. They didn't. They took over and it led to calamity. At one point, there was a king who was a ruler, and he had two sons, Hyrcanus and Aristobulus. And when he was on his deathbed, he said, when I die, I want my wife to become the queen, Aristobulus to become the high priest. Sorry, no. Hyrcanus to become the high priest. Okay, and that's what happened. He died, his wife became the queen, Hyrcanus became the high priest. Aristobulus, nothing. Then the queen died. And Aristobulus says, see, it's my turn for the throne. You already have your position, Hyrcanus. You're the high priest. My turn for the throne. I got nothing until now. I waited my time. Now it's my turn to be the king. And Hyrcanus says, no. I was second in command, so to speak. Now I bump up. You can be the high priest. I'm going to be the king. A battle breaks out. Hyrcanus wins, but there's a whole peacemaking process. And in the end, they decide that they would keep the status quo, that Hyrcanus would remain the high priest, and Aristobulus would become the king. This all goes good for a little while, until Hyrcanus changes his mind. It's like, wait a second, was I drunk? Did I just give away the kingship for the high priesthood? No. It's like trading a pawn for a bishop, whatever it is. He's like, no, we're not doing that. I'm the queen. I'm not giving away the queen for the bishop. I'm not supposed to be the ruler. So he decides to attack his brother, but his brother is holed up in Jerusalem. Aristobulus now, who became the king, and his brother Hyrcanus, who had the regrets and now wants to be the king. So Hyrcanus is outside. Aristobulus is inside. Hyrcanus sees he cannot successfully defeat his brother. So what does he do? And this happens a few times in Jewish history. It's very shameful. He reaches out to the Romans and says, be my allies, and let's conquer Jerusalem together. Let's beat my brother.
Right.
Very bad. And the Roman emperor sends a massive legion of Roman troops. And they're all with Hyrcanus camped out outside Jerusalem, laying siege. This city, by the way, it's an amazing city. Many of you have been to Jerusalem. That city's got to be one of the most sieged cities in all of history. So, what happens? The people inside, they want to still bring the Tamid offering, the continual offering. But they're running out of livestock this time. They remember what happened last time. Last time didn't end well. So this time they devise a plan. They tell the people outside, we will send you down a basket of gold every single day. A basket filled with gold coins. All you got to do is send back up 2 little sheep, 2 little lambs, so we can continue to bring our Tamid offering, our continual offering. And every day, that's what they did. They would lower down a basket of gold coins, 2 sheep would come up, they'd be able to bring this offering. Now there was an old man there, outside of the wall, a wicked man, and he spoke. There was an ancient sort of Greek, Roman language that was used by the nobility, and it was used through sign. It was a sign language. Very few people knew it. But he knew it. And he signed to the people, the Romans outside, he said, you'll never beat the Jews if you keep giving them the offerings. As long as they keep bringing these offerings, God will protect them. If you want to beat it, if you want to beat the Jews on the inside, you got to stop this. The next day, the Jews lower down a basket filled with gold coins, and they send back up a pig. Halfway up, the Jews are pulling their basket, and the basket goes banging against a wall. This pig sticks its hooves into the walls of Jerusalem, and an earthquake shakes the entire region. And that day, Jerusalem fell. That happened on the 17th day of Tammuz, the Tamid offering, the continual offering, which is so important to God. Even though it's a small offering, but the fact that it's done every single day continuously for hundreds of years means so much to God. When that stopped, it was a terrible calamity for the Jewish people. The third tragedy, the fourth tragedy was that there was an apostate, a heretic named Apostomus, who burned the Torah. Burning books has always been, it's a fascinating idea. Wow. What are you doing when you burn a book? The Nazis burned, I don't know if you know this, but the Nazis regularly...
You think you're going to destroy ideas.
Would make, exactly. The Nazis would regularly make massive burnings of Torah, of Jewish books. When you burn a book, you're trying to say, I'm destroying the very essence of this idea. I don't know if you know this, but in Jewish history, there was a time when the Jews burnt books of another great Jew. The Jews burnt the books of Maimonides.
What?
Now, we're all shocked right now. You're shocked to hear that. It happened in France. And I think it was in the city of Montpellier or something like that. When Maimonides came out, you have to understand, Maimonides was pretty radical in his time. And there were many who disagreed with him. Many. Some vehemently so. But the burning of his books was something that was just shocking. People were so against the Maimonides philosophies. I mean, you have to understand, Maimonides was kind of radical. In his works, he's constantly quoting Aristotle. Aristotle is not exactly a Jewish sage, who's not steeped in Jewish tradition. So people found his works incredibly objectionable, but burning them was not the right move. As a matter of fact, 2 years later, in the exact same place where the Jews burned Maimonides' works, the church burned 24 cartfuls, wagon cart, filled with Jewish books. Now, we cannot understand the gravity of that book burning, the second one that I'm referring to, which of course was seen to be as retribution by God for the first book burning, the book burning of Maimonides' works. In those days, this is before the printing press. In those days, every single book was written by hand. Books were so rare that if a community had all 5 books of the Torah, there was no house that had all 5 books. One family would have Genesis, and one family would have Exodus, one family would have Leviticus, and people would come to them to study it. In the synagogue, they had a Sefer Torah, a Torah scroll, usually only one. We go to our synagogues, you open up the Holy Ark, and there's, thank God, amazing, it's beautiful, tons of Sefer Torah. In those days, most communities had one if they were lucky. And to have actual books, Torah books, with teachings inside, priceless. Not only that, when they burned when the church burned, I think it was in 1242 if I'm not mistaken. In 1242, when the church burned the books, there was so much Torah brilliance that was lost forever. Because many of the early scholars, they wrote down their works, but they didn't have the printing press. They didn't have 1,000 copies. Today, you write a book, you got it printed, 3,000 copies, no problem. Then you spend the next 20 years going to book signings trying to sell your books. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
In the olden days, great sages would write down their life's work. But there was only one copy of it, or maybe two. And when the church burned 24 cartloads of Torah in 1242, it was utterly devastating to the Jewish communities at the time. It took hundreds of years to be able to get back. And certain things were lost forever, but even to get back some of those books. So on the 17th of Tammuz, book burning is always seen as a very, very horrific thing because it's an attempt to destroy an entire idea. So Apostomus burned a Torah scroll. It was the first time in history that a Torah scroll was burned. That happened on the 17th of Tammuz. Another tragedy that happened on the 17th of Tammuz was that King Menashe, who was one of the worst Jewish kings ever, brought an idol into the very temple of God.
Seriously?
Who was King Menashe? King Menashe was the son of a king known as King Chizkiah. King Chizkiah had a vision that he was going to have a terrible child. So for years, he did not marry. He's like, I don't want to bring this kid into the world. It's a fascinating thing. I don't know if you know this, but there are a number of descendants of some of the most famous Nazi names, like Himmler or Horst or whatever. I don't know exactly which one, Goebbels. They've decided that their family, they decided we're not having any children. We don't want to carry on the name. The name itself of our father, grandfather is so shameful to us that we've just decided collectively as a family we're not having any more children. Let the name be gone. And these are German families. Chizkiah, the king of Israel, who was an amazing king, Chizkiah was one of the greatest kings that ever lived, embarked on a massive repentance movement to get the Jewish people back close to God. They had strayed far from God. But he never wanted to have children because he saw with prophetic vision that his child was going to be a monster. And then he gets ill. And he's about to die. He's on his deathbed. And the prophet comes to him. Either Isaiah or Jeremiah. I don't remember which. And they come to him and they say, do you know why you're dying? He says, no, I don't. He says, you're dying because you did not fulfill the first commandment in the Torah, to be fruitful and multiply. That's the first commandment in the Torah. You have avoided having children. How dare you? And because of that, you're sick now and you're going to die. And Chizkiah says to the prophet, I know what's going to happen if I have children. I'm going to give birth to a monster. Not doing it. To which the prophet answers a fascinating answer. He says, what are you doing in God's little secret house? You're trying to divine the future? Trying to figure out what's going to happen? Trying to mess around with God's plan? You have a commandment. God said, be fruitful and multiply. It's not your job to decide that I'm not going to have a child because this child is going to be rotten. So you are doing something terrible. You think you're doing a good thing, but you're not. Because that's none of your business. God's secret house of what's going to happen in the future, that's none of your business. What's your business is the commandment that is on you right now. You have a commandment to be fruitful and multiply. You've avoided doing it, and because of that, you're going to die. So Chizkiah says, okay, fine. I'll have a child. He ends up marrying the daughter of the prophet, hoping that the merit of him, the king, and the prophet, whose daughter he married, would stave off this monster from being born. But no, Menashe is born. King Menashe. And he becomes a monster. He introduces, not only does he bring back all the idols that his father worked so hard to abolish, but he actually brings an idol into the temple of God and has people bowing down to an idol in God's temple. To understand what that means, I mean, imagine a person brings someone into their own home in front of their spouse and is being disfaithful right in front of their spouse. That's the calamity of King Menashe bringing an idol into the temple. That happened on the 17th of Tammuz. Finally, the last thing that happened on the 17th of Tammuz was the wall of the city of Jerusalem was breached, and the marauders came in and spilled untold Jewish blood. Those 5 calamities happened on the 17th of Tammuz. That's why we fasted this past Sunday. Interestingly, because I want to end on a good note, King Menashe, what ends up happening of him? To understand the depths of what he did to the Jewish people, it's almost impossible. I mean, basically imagine a Jewish king getting up, strong leader, powerful leader, reigns for decades. I think his total reign was something like 50 years or maybe more. And for the majority of his reign, his greatest campaign is to make the people turn away from God and turn to idol worship. It's incomprehensible. By the way, just to understand something, a couple things I'll say. Number one, we have no idea what the desire for idol worship is, because that desire has been abolished. There's a whole story where the sages got together and they begged for 3 days and 3 nights. They fasted and begged God to remove the desire for idol worship. We don't understand even the desire for idol worship. But you have to understand that idols back then had power. Like, you could actually access stuff through the idols. God created a world of parallels. And God created a world where you're supposed to have free will. Now, if when you pray to God it works, but when you pray to idols it doesn't work, there would be no free will. Why would anybody pray to idols? So before this desire for idol worship was taken away, people could see immediate results by going to idols. We don't understand the desire for idol worship. There was once a great rabbi who was giving a class to his students. And he said, tomorrow, we gotta finish up over here. Tomorrow we're going to talk about our friend Menashe. Like our buddy Menashe. Using remember, he was King Menashe. Like, yeah, okay, tomorrow we'll talk about our buddy Menashe. Menashe the dude. That night, Menashe comes to him in a dream. What did you call me? You call me, you think I'm your buddy? Are you out of your mind? He's like, what do you mean? You served idols. You caused the whole Jewish people to serve idols. You should be proud that I'm calling you my buddy. He says, oh yeah? He says, ask me any question that you have in any field of Jewish thought, study, law, practice. So this rabbi says, fine. And he starts asking him all the unanswerable questions that he has. And like this, Menashe answers all of them. And then Menashe says, okay, now it's my turn. He starts asking him question after question after question. And this rabbi has no idea. So finally the rabbi says, I don't understand. You know so much. How did you sin? How did you bow down to idols? How did you bring idols into the temple of God? To which Menashe says, you are living in a post-idol worship era. The desire for idol worship has long been banished. You have no idea how strong the pull to idol worship was. But I can tell you this much. If you lived in my time, at least I walked in a dignified manner to go serve my idols. He said, if you lived in my times, you would pick up the hems of your cloak, revealing your legs, and you would run. Because you wouldn't want your cloak to get in the way. So you'd pick it up, revealing your legs in an untoward way, to run as fast as you can to go to the idols. You have no idea what the desire for idol worship was in my day. So we cannot comprehend. But I'll tell you, if you want to understand a little bit, like a little tiny bit of what the desire for idol worship looked like, to understand a taste of a taste, right? We cannot understand it. We don't have anything today where you can bow down to a rock and it starts raining. It doesn't work like that. But back then it could work like that. Like the idols actually, again, God gave them power, so to speak. So there'd be a real free will. Do I serve God or do I serve the rock? I can get the rain from both. Why should I go to God if I can go to the rock? If going to God means I got to actually, examine my actions. Do I deserve it? I'm going to God. Do I deserve it? I went to court the other day to fight a traffic ticket. I'm on the way to court. I'm talking to God in the car. I'm like, God, please help me out. Help them reduce it to like an impeding traffic or something. And as I'm saying it, I say to God, I know I don't deserve it. I don't deserve it. I straight up, I know I don't. It's embarrassing even that I'm asking you. Like, I feel bad. Like, I know I don't deserve it, but you are my Father, so I'm going to ask you anyway. I can either have that conversation, which is uncomfortable for me, because it brings me in contact with all the things that I'm not deserving, or I can just bow down to the rock and say, hey, rock, dude, can you get rid of my traffic ticket? And it would work. We don't understand idol worship. But if you want to get a taste of what the desire for idol worship is, I would say the greatest idol in today's world is the almighty buck. Look at what people do for money. Look at how many people sacrifice their family on the altar of the big green dollar bill. Children ignored. Fights with their wives and kids. How much we get blinded by the desire for money, and that's a small inkling of what the desire for idol worship was. But, on a good note, at the end of Menashe's life, he actually returned to God. And the angels were like, no. Sorry, buddy. You just did way too much bad. You don't deserve. You don't deserve to do repentance. What you did in your life, the rot that you introduced to the Jewish people, the idol worship in the temple, 50 years of bringing idols into your world, or less than 50 years, but you don't deserve it. So all the angels, again, this is metaphorical. There is no gates in heaven. But the angels were all going and closing all the gates of heaven so that Menashe's prayers could not come in. And God says, I myself will go down and pick him up. Because I want everybody to know that if I could lovingly bring Menashe back into my embrace after all that he did to me, the many times that he kicked me in the eye and ruined my people, then anybody, no matter what they've ever done, they know they can also come back. Oh, I forgot to tell you about it. Besides the idol worship, Menashe also killed out as many prophets as he could. So we're talking about he was guilty of murder and mass murder, mass idol worship, mass everything. But yet he did repentance, and God said, I myself am going down to go bring him back up. So no matter what anyone here has ever done in their life, we are well within the grasp of coming right back to God with all of our hearts and all of our souls, and he will lovingly re-embrace us. So if anybody here ever thinks, yeah, I wish I heard this earlier, I wish I learned earlier, I wish I connected with God earlier, but I've done a lot of rotten things in my life, don't you worry. The rottenest of the rotten, Menashe, the one who committed mass murder of prophets and mass idol worship, God himself came down from on high to embrace him. So there's for sure plenty of room for us. May we merit to rekindle our relationships with God. Of course, none of us did anything near what Menashe did, but may we all merit to rekindle our relationships with God and see the beauty, the life that comes along with that. Thank you very much. I will see you all next week.